Let me ask a question. Um, how many of you grew up with this work? If you just can type a Y or a yes or a anybody like me grow up watching it on Christmas Eve for years and years and years? See if anybody did. Maybe you don't remember, you were little. You've never seen it. Oh, that's fabulous. Because my next question, of course, was how many people have never seen it. So if you've never seen it, type an in or experienced it, or, maybe through a recording. New for you. Oh, I'm so glad. Oh, this is so great. You, and you went to see it in Dallas. Never, never. We've got a bunch of nevers. I'm thrilled with the yeses and I'm thrilled with the nevers. I'm thrilled with everybody tonight. New. Oh, beautiful. Oh, dear. Did anybody else other than Marion, who's typing at least, grow up sitting in your living room as a little kid on Christmas Eve watching this work? Or at least that you remember. You could have done it and it didn't make an impression. Maybe you were 5, right? 4. Yeah. Well, Marion, you and I've got to do it. We're gonna have to hold the. And okay, Elizabeth, you've taken your daughter in Lexington to see it. That'd be a good question also. How many, if anybody, Elizabeth has said that you've seen a community performance, right? Because that used to be so easy to do. Yeah. I mean, it used to be almost anywhere. If you were in any city of any size, you could go during what we would call Advent, what I used to call, what I used to think was Christmas, but I didn't know. But at any rate, in December, there would be, or even into January, into Epiphany, there would be performances in the community. So it's certainly this year not, but okay, so we'll get into all of that. I think we'll officially start here in a minute. It's good to know that for many of you, this is new, and I'm delighted. I'm so delighted that you've joined, because I don't know for sure, but there's a good chance this work will never leave your heart. That's my hope. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, you know exactly what I'm going to do as I welcome you, is to share my screen. I hope I've done it the right way. And I'm going to start off at the beginning. There you go. There's an idea. With something that I'm just been looking forward to ever since we decided to do it a while back at this time of year, and that is Amahl and the Night Visitors. So, again, I'm going to make an outline to try to stay a bit on point, do a little bit of background, a very little bit about the era, because its premiere was 1951, a little bit about the people in the opera. It's a chamber work, so it's a small cast, the story which we all know, and the music which for many of you will be new. So, without getting into very much at all, the composer was an Italian American who very much considered himself an American composer but kept his Italian citizenship, Giancarlo Menotti. Um, Depending on where you've been, what you've grown up with, he's had a major role to play in American opera and even American opera and music festivals. That's a whole topic on its own. He had enormous success with a string of small operas, and some of them are full scale, some are chamber operas, some of them are short like this one, some of them are longer, and wrote operas, really much beyond the 1968. It's just times changed after 1968, and he didn't have quite the same successes. You could argue that the medium or the telephone or the console or the old maid and the thief or the Saint of Bleecker Street or the unicorn, the gorgon, and the manticore, which we might do on this series, are his biggest helps, his biggest, what would you call it, hits. But really his biggest hit is Amahl, the Night Visitors, because of the circumstances. You can fight over it though. They're all fascinating in English, wonderful possibilities for your kids. Okay, so NBC it was behind the commissioning of this opera. And if we have time, it might be at the end, and it might even be during our question period. And I did actually a post on this opera last week on our Advent calendar, and I made a link to the 1951 archived transmission of this opera, where Menotti comes on and talks about how he took this commission for television, which was a big deal, a new still. Television's very new in 1951. And the idea of an opera written for television to fit within about 51, 52, 55 minutes continuously was really spectacular if you think about it. kind of like going with a virtual choir in our internet era when that first was done by Eric Whitaker or something like that. But he didn't know what to do. He just, it wasn't coming to him. He was already very successful. There's a lot of pressure, a different kind of pressure than normal, a TV audience, you know? So he was at the Metropolitan Museum, not the National Gallery, and the Metropolitan Museum in New York, just trying to clear his head. He walked past his painting, which took him back to his childhood in Italy, where the three kings brought the gifts to the Christ child, to the children. And all of a sudden, everything just swept over him. One of those moments that artists love to have if they're lucky they have them. And bingo, he saw it, he heard it, he knew it. And after that, it was one of those things, you know, where you run home and you start writing it down more or less. Got it done very quickly, and it aired on Christmas Eve in 1951. Okay, now this is a 1958 photo. You may have, some of us had that TV. I didn't. Ours was in a console. It was very, but it probably was like that in terms of the actual screen. And you really did sit around. I mean, younger people might find this all very quaint, but it was pretty exciting. You know, you back up a generation, it was the radio, right? We had radio and TV both as focal points of our homes. So on this little black and white screen came this opera in 1951. Now I was too young in 51. I was a couple months old, so that didn't work. But I was able, as soon as I was able to see and really grasp it, probably from about 56, 57 on, I remember every Christmas Eve this would be shown, and until 1966, I believe. So it was how you celebrated Christmas Eve. Okay, it was then the broadcasts were taken over, and the history of all this, it's kind of complicated about who had the rights and who approved of which productions and which casts, and you can read about all that till you wish, as much as you wish or not. But Hallmark Hall of Fame was a big, kind of like Masterpiece Theater would be in our time, or Masterpiece Classics. So Hallmark Christmas cards, big deal. You know, beautiful Hallmark stores that grew up. The idea of the quality with NBC bringing culture to the masses, which is what people thought was going to happen with the television. It was going to bring many things to the masses: sporting events and political speeches and education and culture. And that's what people thought in 1958. That's what they thought while they drank their soda pop and read their newspapers and clustered around. Well, we know it didn't quite work like that. In some ways, maybe, but that's a different talk. Now, in this opera, in the opening cast, this little boy, Chet Allen, played Amahl. Now, you'll notice the dates of his life. His things did not end well for him. It was one of those classic cases of a very successful child actor in an era where there was far less attention paid to the needs, particularly of child actors. But he had this extraordinary success in the premiere role of Amahl in 1951, and did it for a while. And you know, again, all these things you can read on your own. Um, he played the shepherd boy, Amahl. And let's remember that a shepherd is both a very low level, low status job, but also a very high important job, especially in the Middle East. Well, any place that had an agricultural rural basis. And who did the job of shepherds? Little boys and old men, generally speaking. And it's a tough job. And you would be cold, and it would be dark, and you would be, you know, if a wolf comes or something comes after your sheep, you've got to be able to fight them off. So if you happen to be what we would call handicapped or hindered or crippled, as we used to, you know, which is what Amahl the shepherd boy was, it's very hard to be a shepherd. And he indeed was unable to walk without a staff, and even then very difficult for him to walk. So he couldn't even practice his trade. Now, this happens to be a second production well, there are several early productions. Maybe in question and answer, I have to tell you about Kurt Yajin, who's a special favorite of mine. But he came on, if you may well be buying, if you do decide to buy a DVD of this or a VHS tape or look at it online, you may be seeing one of the productions with Kurt Yajin, and there's your shepherd's pipe. It is a difficult role for a boy, and Menotti specified that it will be a little boy's voice. You do sometimes find it in community theaters with a woman playing the role, young woman who can pull that off, and it can be pulled off quite well. But Menotti wanted that extraordinary sound of your 10, 11, 12-year-old little boy with facility, trained in a boys' choir, as little boys used to be routinely. Certainly back in Italy they were. And that extraordinarily pure sound coupled with the rusticness and the virtuosity required. That's what Menotti wanted. Now, playing the mother in the original production was this amazing woman. Again, someone to read about, Rosemary Kuhlman, who just passed away last year at 97. Um, I get very sentimental on this whole opera, and I get sentimental about her. Um, First of all, I grew up just watching this over and over and over in recordings, and other people singing the role beautifully, like Martha King in some of the productions, and later Teresa Stratus, and of course in community performances there would be other people, but Rosemary Kuhlman defined the role. She was very interesting. She was in the military. She was in World War II, and then came back and kind of reunited with her career as an opera singer, and did this role and worked with Menotti, not just in this work but other works, and was really influential for a while. And then she stepped back from her career and became an executive, a really modern American businesswoman, and filled out her days in the world of the office and the world of business and in entrepreneurial world. And I'll say this quickly, but several years ago, like about five, I opened my inbox after I had blogged in the Advent calendar, which I hope some of you are getting. It's a daily thing we've done now for 11 years on arts, tradition, history, and culture. Just be on our email list and you'll get it every day. And I had written about Amahl as one of my entries that year, and somehow her Google picked that up, and she wrote me an email. And she put the reference words, "From Amahl's mother." And I flipped. I just can't tell you what that moment was like. And she basically just said she loved what I wrote. She was very surprised that people still remembered her role. And we chatted back and forth with email for a while. I had hoped I could come up and see her, but that opportunity didn't present itself. She was on the East Coast. And anyway, special role, special moment, special voice, special woman. Anyone singing this role is extraordinary. That's what I can say. It's got one of those traditions, sort of like Julie Andrews leaves it, or Audrey Hepburn, in My Fair Lady. There's a tradition established by Rosemary Kuhlman, and anyone singing this role feels that tradition. Moving right along to get to the music, which we will, believe me. Again, you can buy this. There's not a lot of versions available, but you will find them. You will, as I say, find it online as well. Remember, a lot of these were shot in black and white. A lot of these were shot in the 50s or 1963. Do not expect HD quality. Do not expect something that was designed for your 60-inch smart TV. I think children adapt to this very easily. I think it's often we adults who are going, well, I know it's a little fuzzy. And the kids are like, no, that's fuzzy. They get over it. So here's another version that you can find. I don't know if this is in DVD, but definitely in VHS. If you find any of these in the used book sale or at the library or the estate sales or what, grab them, okay? Any title of Amahl and the Night Visitors, CDs, LPs, it's a good thing to have, trust me, okay, for all kinds of reasons. Teresa Stratus did a marvelous job. Okay, so who plays the rest of the roles? There's the three kings and the page, their servant, the page, and many, many different people have sung this role. I won't go into their names right now, and but some people have been very, very significant singing this role in the early years. And also, you have a chorus of shepherds and some dancers who entertain the three kings. So there you go. That's the personnel. And of course, we all know the story of the three kings following the star, the three wise men, however you wish, to come and bring their gifts of frankincense and myrrh and gold to the Christ child. That's the story. But let's get to this story. In this story, there's our Amahl, our little boy who cannot walk properly, who cannot do these things, and his mother. You don't know the circumstances. They're desperately poor. And he is outside and playing the way it opens. And it opens with this, all right, let me say this. You can quote me on this. As far as I'm concerned, every note in this piece is perfect. And every word of the text, both of which Menotti wrote. And you all know that generally a librettist doing the text, prima le parole, dopo la musica. Remember, we've talked about that. First the words and then the music. But often it happens, or sometimes it happens, I should say, in specific cases like with Wagner, and that the person writing the text is also the person writing the music. And Menotti did both. He wrote text for other composers as well. He was just good at everything, right? So every word is right on the money, and every note to me is perfect. Am I biased towards this opera? Yes. So at any rate, it opens so gorgeously. These really luscious chords that are both new and old. And you have a little bit of this soft opening, and then you hear the shepherd boy. And he's playing his pipe. Of course, it won't be on an electric keyboard. It's wonderful. And why is he out there? Well, it's nighttime. He's out there every night wishing he could go do something else, probably. There's nothing else to do. And he's watching the star. He's seeing this amazing star, which is the same star that these guys are following, okay? Casper, Melchior, and Balthaz. I can't say it. There's always one thing I can't say in these sessions. You know, the three kings. I won't even try right now. They're following the star. He's watching the star. You know they're going to intersect. And they will. We'll come into how that happens in a minute. And they end up resting in his mother's hovel, shack, shed, cold, no fire, no firewood, no anything. We'll get to how this happens, that they actually come in. It's marvelous. And she goes off to gather sticks and tells him not to bother the kings. But of course, he's a little boy. He's got lots of questions. You don't get three kings every day in your life, right? So there's this wonderful, these scenes are all brief. You got to get the whole thing in 55 minutes, okay? Where he ends up engaging with the kings. We'll look at that again, all the music that comes out of that, even in a short time. And the real thing that happens here, there'll be his mother will come back with some sticks for the fire. She'll send him off to the neighbors and said, look, we got three kings. Guess who showed up for dinner? And we have no dinner. Bring what you have. And they will come in with an amazing assortment. And they will dance briefly and wonderfully and entertain the kings, who then must rest. Then what will happen, and I don't want to give it all away, but I kind of have to in a way. It won't matter when you know the plot. I know people that have watched this, certainly in my household, so many times. And every time it is as if it were new. So again, what will happen with this is that the mother, knowing how impoverished they are, how hungry her child is, unable, there's no future for them. They don't know, they're going to starve. And she sees all this wealth, and she yields to the temptation to try to take just a coin. She will be seen or felt, the page will feel this happen. He wakes up, he freaks out. They all wake up. There's this big brouhaha that happens. Amahl jumps in to sort of save his mother. Mother, don't let them do this to you. My mother is a good person. Don't you do this. Don't you dare hurt my mother. Don't you dare. And the king said, it's all right, woman. Keep the gold. The child we seek has no need of our treasures. And in this beautiful, beautiful text, basically says the child we seek has something to give the world that is far above anything that we will ever be able to offer him. And the mother will sing, of course, I have waited. She says, no, please, I don't want the gold. I'm sorry. She's very contrite. For this king, I have waited all my life. And then little Amahl says, well, mother, I want to take the king, gives the king something too. And the only thing I have is my crutch, which he gives. And you know what this means. He can walk. Suddenly he can walk. And in just a very few minutes, the whole thing turns around. And there's this glorious and joyful scene where not only can he walk and dance and run, but the kings say, woman, let him come with us. And he says, oh, mother, let me take the crutch myself. Could I go? Could I go? And she gives permission. Now, I know this is fairly unrealistic. I get that part, okay? Even if any of all of this happened, she wouldn't just say, oh, okay, you're walking now. Goodbye. Go off with these three kings. I mean, that's not going to happen. Maybe not in the modern world. It might have happened then. It's an opportunity, right? You don't get every day. And so the opera will end with him with a crutch strapped on his back, going with the kings to find baby Jesus. There it is. Now, let's go to the music. If you're going to do this work, And remember, Menotti goes back and feels and hears his childhood. You're going to want shepherdy music, you want some kingly stuff, but not too much. But you want that sense of the outdoors, the stars, the meadows, the rustic. You want all of that. So you use woodwinds, English horn, oboe, bassoons, clarinet, some too. But mostly this sense of that. What do you do to make shepherd music is the question. And you want double reeds, much more so than single reeds. Those ones that have the little, that you, like an oboe, a bassoon, or an English horn. You want it to be simple. You want it to have some what we call modality, these are scales that don't quite sound like our do re mi, because one note or another is flatted. Sounds more like folk music. Sounds more like exotic in a gentle way. And you want drones, even in what I played you. This is a drone. A drone. Well, the little drummer boy, right? Right. Well, part of what makes that so wonderful and popular is that you have all the time, right? And you don't even have to play it more than once. You could just hit it. Right? So a drone sets this idea of being, of shepherdy music and rustic music and all this. And you also want some irregular patterns which are going to come throughout this whole thing. So you have things that go like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, maybe. Instead of just a square beat like a march or a waltz. And that's basically the musical formula that you need to make this work. It helps to know what you're doing. So I already sort of gave you a little hint of how his opening music sounds. Yeah. It gives us some sense of it, all right? Opening the sky. Well, his mother brings him in, and we know all of that part. So that's a sense of the music. Again, I'm very much hoping you all will be watching, listening, so this will not just be academic. Now, what I'd like to have you hear is about a 3 or 4 minute clip. He tells his mother, and she says, you've been what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And he'll sing, Mother, it's just not such a bad thing. We're poor, but we can always go begging, and I will dance and play, and you will dance, and I will play my flute, and won't it be a wonderful life? And anyway, let's just get a little sense of the emotional content of this.
A beggar. Don't cry, mother dear. Don't worry for me. If I must go begging, a good beggar I'll be. I know sweet tunes to sing before dancing. We'll walk and walk from village to town. You dressed as a gypsy and I'll the clown. We'll walk and walk from village to
All right. So let's move along in the music. We've got our little boy, and he has we've got, well, actually, how do these kings get in here? Because I promised you I was going to talk about how did the kings get into the room. It's really, really, really fun stuff. He's sleeping. They're both sleeping on the straw. There's no heat, there's no food, there's no blankets hardly. And there's a knock on the door, tap, tap, tap. And she says, Amahl, go see who's there. So he, of course, is on a crutch. So he has to go very, very gingerly. And what Menotti does with the music is so marvelous here. He hobbles or hops to the door. And what you get from the music, let me get it here. Okay, it goes like this. He opens the door. There's a king. So the same kind of little cute, kind of hoppy little innocent, but kind of anxious but innocent pattern goes backwards. that's going to happen 3 times. One more time up. And then a big rest. He opens the door, which is not what he's expecting, right? And he sings, forgive me, I am not Amahl. Mother, 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 come with me. I want you to be sure that you see what I see. And of course, she has had him tell every tale in the world. He's a little boy. You know, the fish was this big when it's this big. You know, the creek was this high when it's this high. The whole thing. And she basically comes back with him kind of sternly because her life is not easy and things are not fun. And she says, sort of sings like this music. Basically singing, what is it now? And she says, you won't believe me. Outside the door, there is, he hesitates, there is a king. Well, she sings, ah. What does she sing? Exactly what you sing. What can I do with this boy? What can I do? What can I do? Go back to the door, Amahl. So what do you think happens again? The same thing with the music, similar to what you just saw, a little different this time, but it's sort of the same idea. It's shorter. Interestingly, in all 3 of these poems, Menotti does 7 measures up, 5 measures 6 back. Maybe the next time 5 measures up, 7 measures back. He's not repeating. It's just a little bit of fluctuation. And he comes back with, and she sings again, mother, 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 come and see. Well, she's going to say the same thing. What is wrong with you? And what did you see? And then he says, mother, I didn't tell the truth before. That's no surprise. There was not a king. That's a good boy. There were 2 kings. Well, what is she going to do? What am I going to do with that boy? What am I going to do? Go back again. Well, he goes back again, and we get the same wonderful music again. And we'll play it all, but up it goes. Hesitation. He opens the door. Now there's 3 kings. And he comes back again. He says, mother, you won't believe me. I'll believe me if you tell the truth. You won't believe me. They go back and forth. It's absolutely marvelous because you know what? It's exactly what happens with little kids, especially little boys that are, capable of a big imagination, which Amahl definitely has. And then finally he says, there are 3 kings and one of them is black. Well, she loses it at this point. What in the world am I going to do? And then she tells him, I'm going to the door. You're really in trouble when your mother says, I'm going to the door. You're messing this up so bad. And Menotti does a wonderful thing. He has Amahl go ahead of her and do his regular she goes with Amahl's music. But down in the bass. Okay? But Amahl kind of does an anxious version of it higher up above her music, and he goes first because he's a little bit ahead of her. So it goes sort of like this. And of course, it's in pizzicato strings. Does that make sense? So they're both doing their little dance to the door, and listen to the harmonies, what happens, because they get to the top, and you have, I'll go slow. Let's see. And there's a little breath mark, and we get this. A beautifully spread out E major chord out of nowhere. And what do these kings sing? They sing, good evening. Well, what do you expect a king to sing, right? Good evening. And of course, Amahl says, what did I tell you? Shh. And they ask if they can come in. So that is what has happened to get them to come in. And they have a wonderfully pompous march in with this kind of kingly music, with with this session with their servant bringing in all of the things, and of course it sounds so wonderful in the orchestra. And they come in and they sit down, and she explains, as I've already said, there's nothing in the house to eat, and and they just want to rest for a while. And they explain that they're on the way following that star. Well, Amahl's stock just rose a whole lot at that moment. Well, she goes out to gather the twigs, as I said, and Amahl has this fabulous moment where he gets to sort of talk about what's going on. He gets to question them. She says, "Don't bother them," which is of course for a child is exactly permission to go bother them. Correct? "No, mother, I won't." Of course he does. And they ask him a question. Well, little boy, who da da. And are you a real king? Yes. Do you have regal blood? Yes. Can I see it? No, it's just like yours. Well, what use is that then? Some charming dialogue that Menotti wrote. He totally captured the child, the innocent, not so young, but still very innocent child confronting these three kings. And Casper, is deaf. He was, according to tradition, he was deaf, right? So he can't hear what's going on. And you see it right here in the music. Are you a real king? Am I not? And they say, yes. Balthazar says, yes, Casper. And Amahl then, what is that? It's a parrot. And Amahl says, does it talk? And he goes, does it talk? How do I know? He can't hear. Does it bite? Whatever. And of course, he shows him his finger that's been bitten by the parrot. And then you get this moment that I just finished writing about this next little brief song, which is going to be, I'm just going to give it to you how it sounds, and then we'll hear it as it really sounds, where Amahl asks, what is that? Because there's this box. And it's somehow not quite like the box for all the jewels and the things they're taking to baby Jesus. It's different. And of course, Casper is going to tell him with this wonderful text, this is my box. This is my box. This is my box. I never travel without my box. Now, just hearing that the first time, you are not falling over the floor in amazement about this. But what I can tell you is that within the context of this brief work, this is my box. This is my box. I never travel without my box. And then he tells him what's in the drawers. Now, if we're where I hope we are, I can play this scene for you, although at this point I'm not entirely sure how it's going to be. But let's see. You should be seeing the big messiness here. And I have it set here, at least I think I do. And we'll get to see again how this works. The scene I've just described for you.
But Mother says that now we shall both go begging from door to door. Won't it be fun?
It has its points.
Are you a real king too? Eh? Aren't you a real king too?
Oh, truly, 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 yes, I am a real king. Am I not? Yes, Casper.
What is that? Eh? What is that?
A parrot.
Does it talk? Eh? Does it talk?
How do I know?
Does it bite? Eh? Does it bite?
Yes.
And what is this?
This is my box. This is my box. I never travel without my box. In the first drawer I keep my magic stones. One carnelian against all evil and envy. One moonstone to make you sleep. One red coral to heal your wounds. One lapis lazuli against wart and fever. One small jasper to help you find water. One small topaz to soothe your eyes. One red to protect you from lightning. This is my box. This is my box. I never travel without my box. In the second drawer I keep all my beads.
So you get an idea. And then in the third drawer is licorice. Well, then the mother comes in, you've been bothering these shepherds, etc., etc., etc. And there is this poignant moment a bit later on in the opera, right before it's time to rest, after the shepherds and all of this, when Amahl will say to the kings very quietly, is there anything in your box that would heal a crippled shepherd boy? And of course, Casper's going to say, eh? Because he can't hear him. And Amahl will say, never mind. Now, when you get to that moment, it's just so incredibly poignant because this is my box is so much fun, and there's a whole description of all lapis lazuli and different gems to ward off evil and to ward off, bad weather and bad roads and bad all the things. Traveling was pretty dangerous. And then the licorice at the end, have some. But then later, is there anything in that box that would heal a poor shepherd boy? Well, the Amahl is sent off to go get the shepherds and get them to go bring some food. And by golly, Ned, they come back with food. But before that happens, I don't have I'm going to go back to this because it's distracting. I know to have, and I wish I had pictures of all of this. But you're going to watch it and you'll see it all. The mother is really, really interested in asking them questions. What is all this for? Where are you going? And the king says, this is for the child. What child? The child we seek. Which child do you seek? Do I know him? So the king sing a very, very the music's up here, but of course their voices are lower. And they ask, first it's Melchior, he says to the woman, have you seen a child the color of wheat? Actually, I think I have that text. Let me see if I can find. Here it is. All right. Did we see it now? The text? Oh, good. If I just had handouts and we were all together, we wouldn't even, if we could just all, as I say, sit on the piano bench together. Wouldn't that be fun? So this is this beautiful text where the three kings, and it sounds like this. Have you seen a child the color of wheat, the color of dawn? His eyes are mild, his hands are those of a king. As king he was born, and luscious music. Incense, myrrh, and gold we bring to his side. These really rich, but she answers back, yes, I know a child, the color of earth, the color of dawn. Of course, she's speaking of her son. His eyes are mild, his hands are those of a king, as king he was born. But no one will bring him incense or gold, though hungry and sick, it said. He is my child, my darling, my own. But what's interesting about it, okay, that's very powerful, okay? So they're singing about this child they're seeking. She's singing about this child she's trying to keep alive and save this little boy's, to survive together with him. But instead of answering it, remember I played this, and this is actually like in an F minor. And she could have answered, yes, I know a child. But she doesn't. Listen to what he does harmonically. It's a simple thing. And there's so many instances of this kind of thing in this brief work. It's so clever. So she answers this way. Yes, again. I'm not sure if you'll hear this. Of course, it's very different if you can sort of hear it done with the orchestra. But and she could have gone, but she doesn't. She goes. So this. Those two keys, a sort of an A minor and an F minor, are so unrelated to one another. They're both very harmonious in their own way together, but they are quietly jarring. And this goes back and forth through some really beautiful text, okay? So it's just an extraordinary moment. I can't think of a more beautiful moment in any huge opera. I mean, I could listen to Genie and Verdi, where this so the back to that the wise men, they are they are talking about the Messiah, and she is talking about the person she loves more in the world, her little child, right? Ooh, I love it. I love it. Okay, moving right along. So, at any rate, that moment changes, and we get the shepherds. You hear them in the distance. It's always good to hear shepherds in the distance, you know. And you shepherds, shepherds, and they're coming. And Amal's done a good job because these people come in with some food. First, you hear this wonderful chorus, and I tell you, if you get around people who know, have grown up with, sing, produced, attended this opera, and you say the word Emily or Michael or how are your children or whatever, it's possible that they're going to come out with something that goes like this. And this will be a cappella, no orchestra, just voices of the shepherd. Which is terribly jolly, don't you think? Emily, Emily, Michael, Bartholomew, how are your children and how are your sheep? Isn't that fun? Let's sing it. Emily, Emily, Michael, Bartholomew, how are your children and how are your sheep? Goes on. Dorothy, Dorothy, Peter, Evangeline, give me your hand, come along with me. And then there's some very funny text. It goes like this. I should probably pay attention to what I'm doing here, although I don't know why. We just make it up as we go, right? All the children, let's see, all the children have mumps, except they're singing high. All the flocks are asleep. We are going with them all, bringing gifts to the king. And then more names. Benjamin, Benjamin, Lucas, Elizabeth. Isn't that fun? And it goes on, and you've got several verses. And I tell you what, if you hear this 2 or 3 times, it's going to be another one. If I come to your house and I go, Emily, Emily, I hope you all kids will go, Michael, Bartholomew, how are your children and how are your sheep? You can dance through this chorus. And then they bring in all this food. And let me tell you, they bring in some food. They bring in, it's sort of interesting. I had to look up what a meddler was. Not a meddler like you get into other people's business, but it's like a rose hip, they said. I have no idea what this is. But there it is. There's a picture of it, and apparently it's a very interesting fruit. Maybe you've had one. And the music for it is so fun. Again, it goes like this. Olives and quinces, let's see, olives and quinces, apples and raisins, nutmeg and myrtle, medlars and chestnuts, which is already a pretty good meal for people who don't have very much, right? This is all we shepherds can offer you. And the kings will go, what you expect them to do? Low. Thank you, thank you, thank you kindly, thank you, thank you, thank you kindly. And then they go back through the menu, and they're bringing platters down. We'll see if we can get the scene up in a minute. Citrons and lemons, musk and pomegranates, goat cheese and walnuts, figs and cucumbers. And again, this is all we shepherds can offer you. Thank you, thank you, thank you kindly, thank you, thank you, thank you kindly. And the menu goes on, okay? So it's a great moment. And then they are going to dance. Because the mother will say, after all of these wonderful foods, she pushes a couple of the mother, it would have been Rosemary Coleman in the opening, pushes them up and says, entertain our kings. And here's that drone again. You get that kind of thing for a while, not very long, nothing's very long in this work. And then it picks up, and you get a little bit more of a bouncy dance. So you have different, and then there's some other rhythms that come up, but it's all fast. You know, there's like a minute and a half of this, 40 seconds of that, and they dance, and then the kings say, you know, it's time for us to rest. Thank you very, very much. And, you know, it's time for us to rest now. Now, let me see. I got to keep in mind the time. So the shepherds leave. I'm sorry, you don't know, I'm narrating. It's so tempting to look at all of this. The whole thing fits in this. Can you imagine? It's so tiny. You know, I have magazines that are thicker than this. But
then there's a scene that we've had. I think I might, if I share, I think it's worth stopping and sharing and hoping the technology will continue to work. How's that? Let's see. She goes for the gold. Can you see this? Let's see. I know this sounds not terribly good. It'll be much better when you do it. She's sung all that.
Look at there, look at there, look at that ugly man, hurt my mother. Look at there, ugly man, hurt my mother. I'm scratching your face, on that with your teeth. Look at there, look at there, look at that ugly man, hurt my mother. Oh, Mr. King, don't let him hurt my mother. My mother is good. She cannot do anything wrong. I'm the one who lies. I'm the one who steals. Look at there, look at there, look at that ugly man, hurt my mother. Look at there, ugly man, hurt my mother.
And of course, he exhausts himself beating up this man, and the kings intervene and they say, you know, it's all right. You can keep the gold. And that's when this almost, I mean, it will give you chills. They sang, the child that we seek does not need our gold. And she says, please, no, no, I want to send something too. All my life I've waited this moment. And then, of course, you know what's going to happen with the crutch. And I think I won't play you that excerpt, even though, and maybe later, maybe we will bring it up in a bit of some questions. But the point is, it's so beautiful. And I don't know that the sound is coming across on Zoom so well. I'll go back instead to the PowerPoint. I've got a nice picture of what happens. And you can sort of see that. And he can walk, and the music is gorgeous. And it's probably better I don't play it for you, because between my singing and this keyboard, we can't make this work. But it's so tender. And then, of course, I think you saw it a minute ago where he was handing the crutch to the kings. So then there's this end. It's going to end really quickly. Remember, the whole thing's inside 55 minutes. We've come through a lot of plot. And they have to bid farewell because he's going with the kings. And we're back to not really a drone. If you look at the left hand, it is a drone, but it's almost a lullaby, even though it's in 4. It is sort of, all right. And Amahl's probably never been away from his mother. She's probably never been away from him. And so they have to talk about what's going to happen. What do I do with my crutch? You can tie it on my back. Don't forget to wear your hat. And he says, don't forget to feed my bird. Don't forget to feed my cat. Watch my cat. Yes, I promise. Wear your hat. Yes, I promise. It's just so gentle and tender. And it goes like this. What to do with crutch? You can tie it to my back. Don't forget to wear your hat. I shall always wear my hat. Oh, my darling, oh, my darling, goodbye. And then together the child and the mother sing this beautiful, separated by the interval of a 6. I shall miss you very much. If you can have a prettier two lines of music than that, I don't know where it would be. And you have to think about it. What the dangers that they're going to face? Is she ever going to see her child again? He's excited. He's a kid. He's going off with 3 kings. She understands what's about to happen. And so the reason I want to focus on that, just because it's a gorgeous ending. It's a calm and beautiful and sad and happy ending at this child who is now healed, taking his crutch to the manger, following the star. And that lovely line, beautiful, beautiful music. So this is the very, and so off he goes out of the door, and as it began, they embrace one more time. The king says, let's get going. You know how it is. We got to get on the road, right? And then you have this beautiful back to C major and the opening of his shepherd's pipe music. And it's just so nice. This same thing he played at the beginning. And then you get to the last two lines. If you're following the score, I'm at measure 133, where it says poco meno espressivo. And we hear that echo of her beautiful last words to him and his to her. Hopefully, not last words, where she says, wear your hat. Yes, I promise. Right? And then the orchestra goes off. Okay, now I said I wasn't going to cry because the end of this. I've watched this thing. I can't even tell you how many times I've watched this, and I have the CDs, and I listen to it all the time. Let's see, am I still sharing or not? Probably not. Doesn't matter. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, I am? Good. No, but I will reshare, I promise. I will find it again because I want to show you a few more things, or one more thing at least. So, if you can watch this opera, if you are at all inclined to feel sentiment and you cannot be at least slightly moved, I don't know how you do it. Every time we watch it, I watch it with my daughter, and we get the grandchildren, friends. Every time I've seen it live, every time I watch the DVD performances or the video performances or online performances, I'm just a wreck at the end. Okay, so what I wanted to, oh, well, no, that will hold for a minute. Don't be discouraged by the quality of the video you just saw. That was the 1951 production. It's amazing that was archived. Christmas Eve, 1951. You will find a much clearer print in black and white for 1955 if you go onto YouTube. You will find, I think, the 63 performances in there, and you will also find a heap of community and even professional operas that have parts of them all up or complete versions. Now, some of them are not so good. Some of them are very good. You can, set your kids the task of finding which Amahl to watch tonight. Also, what I think works very nicely, if you watch this through once, whether you do the 51 performance, the 55, which is much clearer, the 63, and there's a color performance with Teresa Stratus. If once you've seen it, I think you can get the music. You might want to buy the CD, because you might, or download it, or however you get your music. It might be available. Who knows? Just streaming. I have no idea. Because it's so lovely to hear it with full orchestra and full quality of the voices. And all the action. It's a good opportunity for kids, especially who are new to opera, which is just a sung play, a play with singing, to know the story, as we do with musicals, and then hear the score, or as we do with movie scores, and run the plot in their heads, right? While they hear the music in a better sound quality on good speakers or headphones if you do that. And of course, if you have it on in the kitchen, then you can have them dance to "This is my box, this is my box," the little ones, or you can do "Emily, Emily, my whole thought of you. How are your children and how are you sure?" There are definitely some rockin' and rollin' tunes in this thing. And then you, as a parent, seeing this mother's anguish and all that she's trying to do to survive, can think about these tender moments, plus the moments of revelation where she understands, where the kings say there will be no need for our gold when we find this child. That's Amahl and the Night Visitors. There's many more places we could look at, although, again, it's also short, that in a way, any of them, we could do not much longer and cover most of the songs or the movements or the sections or the pieces or the dances that are there. But what I hope you'll find is that you'll never, ever go tired of hearing this music. But of course, what matters tonight here in our Advent time as we draw closer to Christmas Eve is this wonderful work that, again, was designed for a world that they thought television was going to create, where there would be endless concerts and operas and ballets and things for the viewing audiences at home. how lucky we are that this one is a masterpiece. And I hope that's how you will find it. A small masterpiece, a masterpiece that is perfect for leading people, children, into opera. But again, you got to work with the visual, but look around. You'll find the clearer and sharper productions. And perhaps next year in December, you can find a production to go to in your community. Big churches do these a lot, community groups do it. Maybe you will organize a production of Amahl at your church or within a group of people you work with in terms of music and the arts. Even if you did a scene, and again, it's very short, very possible. Um, so I've said enough about Amahl. I didn't cry. I almost did. I hope you will. Someone in your group who watches it. And I would be happy now to take any questions or comments. I hope that it was possible through this keyboard and Zoom and those few clips to convey some of the tenderness and perfection of this work.